And that seems to have stabilized now. So welcome everybody and good morning to the latest in the Powering Up Recovery events. And this one is for Lancashire. And thank you to Electricity North West for their proactive stance in taking us forward with these events and really opening up the floor to make sure we're hearing from policymakers, from businesses and everyone, all of our stakeholders in Lancashire. You need to be involved in really creating the network to take us forward on our green net zero plans towards 2030 and beyond. So I'm Miranda Barker, I'm the Chief Executive of East Lancs Chamber of Commerce. I'm a LEP director and I lead our energy and low carbon strand for Lancashire LEP. And I'm the chair of today's event. We have a wonderful panel of, if my dog keeps barking, I will be quiet and I will hand over to Paul, who is always on hand to fill in when these things happen. I do apologise. The perils of 2020, 2021. I'm so pleased to be joined by so many of our leading business and political leaders across Lancashire and academic experts in the field, and such a great list of attendees as well, as you can see from your panel at the side of the screen. Let me run you through what our plan is. We have two panels today, and our key questions are: what are the challenges for business and political leaders on the road to a green recovery? And how do we make net zero carbon a choice for business, consumer and communities? And also, as the net zero transition accelerates, what are the opportunities to reboot the economy and really create green jobs and skills in Lancashire as part of a green COVID recovery? So in terms of our housekeeping, the session is being recorded and will be posted online. You can see there the hashtags and the links to make sure you're part of that debate. There will be live polling questions throughout the session for panelists and attendees. So please do get involved because they are your chances to give us the statistical background to make decisions going forward. And while the panelists talk, please make sure you're using the chat function to share your opinions and comments and posting your questions so that we can pull you in to ask the panel your questions yourselves. And all the panelists, please keep yourselves on mute to reduce the background noise. And as I said, if my dog starts barking, I will mute and hand over to Paul. So we have two wonderful panels, which we will take you to very soon. But first, to start off, I would like to introduce you to Paul Burcham, from the Regulator and Communications Director from Electricity North West. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Miranda. Really great to be running the 2021 Powering Up series of events, starting with Lancashire this time around, and we're really focusing on powering up the recovery. So we had a very successful campaign last year with the Powering Up events, and we're really focused on the recovery now. COVID has just dominated the news, hasn't it, for the past year, and it's very easy for the very pressing climate change emergency that we face to be pushed into the background. But it's clear that the economic response to the impacts of COVID-19 must benefit the environment, while the plans to address climate change, to get to net zero and to improve our environment must benefit the economy and society and drive our recovery. So that's why we're really keen on a green recovery. We have, jointly with Ofgem, launched a green recovery scheme, and as part of phase one for that scheme, we have the acceleration of some of our own infrastructure projects in 2020, including the going as fast as we could on the infrastructure to support the Samsbury Aerospace Enterprise Zone. And that's part of phase one of the Green Recovery Programme. Phase two is under consultation now, closing on the 19th of March, and that is on our website. But that does include additional support for EV charging in Lancashire, for technologies that can create additional capacity on our network to support the rollout of low carbon technologies. So I'd urge people to take a look at the green recovery pages on our website for that. And if you want to support the Lancashire-based projects on our long list, then get your support in for those. Because now really is a critical time for the region and for the power network. The decisions that we make now have an impact on us for the long term, and some of the decisions that we have to make in 2021 as Electricity North West are key, because this is the year we submit our business plan for investment in the region from 2023 to 2028. So that's really a massive driver for us in terms of this engagement. So we're really keen to hear from all of our stakeholders what's important to them about what we do and the wider green recovery. How fast should we move to power up the recovery in Lancashire? What are the specific challenges and opportunities that Lancashire faces in the recovery? And what do you think Electricity North West's role should be? Maybe beyond infrastructure. What should our role be in driving a green transition to net zero? What should our role be in supporting customers across the region who are struggling, who have found their circumstances exacerbated by the COVID situation, and how much support should we be providing to protect customers in vulnerable circumstances? So how we do all of that and balance the achievement of net zero whilst balancing the impact on bills is really critical for us, and the big topic of engagement for us as we finalise our business plans this year. And it's really important. I'm really pleased that we're talking to businesses today, because businesses account for about 2/3 of our income and through the bills that they pay. But our research has shown that maybe some businesses are less willing to fund through their energy bills, supporting customers in vulnerable circumstances or driving this transition to net zero, than they are to fund things like improving the reliability of the electricity network. So we've got to make sure we get the right balance between service and cost, taking on board the views of all of our customers who use the electricity network, from the domestic customers to the major energy users, as well as all the views of our stakeholders. So today is an important day for Lancashire, an opportunity to drill down on the challenges and opportunities ahead. I'm really looking forward to hearing views from everybody across the panel on the key questions, and hearing how we can go forward, power up this recovery, stimulate clean growth, good jobs, new skills, and drive forward the economy that will benefit everybody whilst getting to a very challenging set of net zero targets. Thanks very much, Miranda. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think Electricity North West is both a very proactive DNO nationally, but also has a uniquely useful position across the North West. Because as you say, what should you do to take it beyond just putting the infrastructure in place? And I think you've got an opportunity really to be a good intelligence source for us in Lancashire, seeing what's happening in Cumbria and in Manchester and in Liverpool, and taking those ideas and helping us understand where you see elements that we need to pick up in Lancashire. And I think we benefit from learning that from you. Also, we know that you have a desire to make sure the energy network in the area is really ready to help us go forward, not just with working with our key manufacturers and those really seriously energy consuming businesses to make sure they're ready, but also to make sure that our burgeoning low carbon sector is really able to capitalize on the skills we've got locally to make sure we can really be part of the green and net zero recovery for the UK from COVID and beyond. So we're really pleased that you've got that proactive stance. And today is all about that. Today is about hearing the discussion, obviously, from our panel members, but especially for getting the input from our audience members, looking at the list of attendees that we've got. You are hugely important in terms of your use of energy, your need for energy, and also your helping driving us forward on this net zero agenda. So please get those questions in there. The plan is to work through the panelists, first of all, asking them the basic question, which I'll rephrase again in a moment, and hearing for sort of literally just 2 or 3 minutes of introduction and their take on each of those people's opinion about that leading question. And then we'll go into the Q&A from the audience. So please get your questions in so that we can start to call on you and find out what the panelists think about what you have to say, and also start to form that strategy for Electricity North West to go forward. So let me just introduce you to our first panel. We have 4 members for this panel. We've got Damian Waters, Director for the CBI for North West. We've only known each other for about 22 years, Damian, so I think it'll be nice to see you again. Councillor Michael Green, Cabinet Member for Economic Development, Environment and Planning at Lancashire County Council. Nice to see you, Michael. We have Harry Hoster, the Director of Energy at Lancaster University, Director of Energy Lancaster, sorry, at Lancaster University, and Mark Lees from Heysham 1 and 2 from EDF. Good morning, Mark. It's nice to see all of you. So first of all, if you could introduce yourselves and give us your brief answer to the question, what are the challenges for business and political leaders on the road to a green recovery? And how do we make zero carbon a choice for business, consumer and communities? And we'll go off in that order that I've given you already. So Damian first, please.
Thanks, Miranda, and nice to see you, and nice to see that the photograph you put up of me was about 22 years old as well. So, morning, everybody. So, as Miranda said, I'm Damian Waters, and I'm Director for CBI in the Northwest. CBI is Britain's biggest business organisation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you this morning. And to answer the question directly, what are the barriers? We do a huge amount of work and have been for many, many years on climate, net zero and carbon reduction. And barriers fall into kind of 3 main categories from what our members would tell us. First would be policy and regulation challenges. And you'll all know that energy policy and climate policy over the years, the goalposts have moved so frequently that it's difficult for businesses to keep up. In fact, what one business said to me, it's almost as if the goalposts are being dragged around the field by a tractor at high speed. So the lack of consistent policy and regulation is a challenge. Second would be, if we're frank, the lack of company prioritization and investment. Particularly during difficult times. So we know COVID over the past 12 months has put lots of businesses under significant pressure and stress. And it's not always the case that action for the climate is then high up on the agenda, because businesses are struggling to survive, and understandably that becomes the priority. And then the third kind of grouping would be customer engagement. So we do find that there is a growing desire for not just customer but societal shifts in terms of both their own behaviour and business behaviour. But there are challenges there. We've traditionally over the past 20 years or so had a focus on business operations in terms of climate and kind of net zero, and we focused on energy intensive businesses, quite rightly, to address those. But what customers say to us now is they need more affordable products and services. And two perfect examples outside of kind of business activity. 2 of the biggest contributors to our kind of carbon emissions in Lancashire are housing and travel. And housing is a perfect example. It's still much more affordable to have a gas powered combi boiler in your house than it is to have a kind of a low carbon alternative. And just to give it kind of another example, it's still much more affordable to have a petrol or diesel car than it is to have a electric vehicle. So customers want to make the change, but they need to be able to engage with products and services that are affordable to the people in Lancashire. So kind of there's some barriers, but I also think there's lots of opportunity. So maybe I'll end it there and look forward to hearing the questions in the discussion. Thanks, Miranda.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you. Councillor Michael Green, same question.
Good morning, Miranda. Good morning, everyone. On this morning, it's nice to see you all, and thank you for inviting me to speak on this very important topic moving forward. So in terms of our position as a county council, we've always felt that the environment was important, but this has become more so. So we've recently passed a new resolution of the county council on environment and climate matters, and that was setting out our ambition for Lancashire's economy to be carbon net zero by 2030. And that's now driving a new programme of activity in the county. So one of our challenges was a lack of capacity in terms of officers to drive forward the agenda for the county council. We are now putting that right. So we, in the recent budget a couple of weeks ago, we put extra resources in to bring that forward, and a report is coming to the next cabinet meeting to implement what we need to be able to do what we need to do as a county council. Because that was a challenge for us. We had the ambition, but didn't have the means to actually deliver it. So it's important to have both, in my view. Obviously, there's a lot of targets that's already been mentioned. You know, Lancashire's programme complements and strengthens the UK's ambition. We know the government announced a reduction of 68% in annual carbon emissions by 2030, which is a significant tightening of the previous targets. We've had the reports from the Climate Change Committee. 13 of our districts and unitary councils in Lancashire have adopted net zero targets by 2030 or 2050, but with most at the earlier date. And some councils have prepared action plans to do that. Related to the net zero targets in Lancashire, Miranda, there's emerging research for the Greater Lancashire Plan, which aims to provide an evidence-based assessment of Lancashire's current carbon footprint and various pathways to achieve a 68% or a 100% reduction of our carbon emissions by 2030 or 78% by 2035. As we know, there are also new duties in the Environment Bill which complement this, and that's currently going through Parliament, and that will place significant new obligations on councils to deliver air quality improvements and nature recovery. And that's something we need to be alert to and be able to respond to as well on a Lancashire footprint. Government's announced a number of initiatives. I'm not going to go through all those, but I think it's nice to see that they are ambitious, and it's an opportunity for us to work with them to drive forward this agenda and drive forward the green growth that we all want to see. In terms of working with partners, the County Council entered into a collaboration agreement with Electricity North West just over 12 months ago, and since that time we've been working strategically to progress a number of projects, initially with a focus on the enterprise zone at Samsbury, but the relationship and opportunity extends right across the county as we look to better place strategic sites and anticipate necessary utility and infrastructure requirements which will be needed. The agreement has facilitated a strong partnership at the site, and I will commend Electricity North West for that. And over £7.5 million of private sector investment to unlock the power provision to existing and future businesses located on the enterprise zone. Works have commenced on this exciting project, and the low carbon agenda is a key component of the site, subject to further studies. The Samsbury site holds the potential for a further 1 million square foot of development, 2,500 to 3,000 jobs to progress in the advanced manufacturing and engineering sector. We've completed 3 developments on that site to date, and we're progressing with a £6.7 million growth deal programme of utility and infrastructure. As a county council, we continue to drive this key economic recovery site forward, and inquiries have ramped up significantly in recent months, which is pleasing to see. We've got a clear, strong message that we are delivering. So sites such as the enterprise zone provide a key opportunity for partners such as the County Council, British Aerospace and the LEP to work towards stimulating jobs, investment and economic recovery particularly in the challenging times that we find ourselves in with the global pandemic. I'll leave my comments to there, and I look forward to the discussion later, Miranda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's good that we've got that anticipatory investment now happening, and I know that's a hard thing to do for both Electricity North West and councils, but it's good that it's there. So if we can move on swiftly, please. Harry Hoster, Director of Energy Lancaster, please. Thank you.
Maybe one day I'll be Director of Energy Lancashire. Let's see. Moving up. So yeah, so I'm coordinating the energy-related research at Lancaster University, currently with a specific focus on energy storage and batteries, and recently moving on to hydrogen. So my view is a bit in a tunnel of energy storage in combination with renewables. And I mean, the general observation that we see, we engage a lot with the local councils and also local businesses. We see that whatever you want to install that is green doesn't really require a lot of research, because anyway, you can only install what's already there, but it's typically always more expensive, and we heard that. And this, I mean, there must be ways of having a systematic access to contracts for difference to make sure that things are happening, even though they might be expensive, because they might be the only green way forward to go. And the other thing that is important, if you then do it, don't import the cheapest thing that you can find via the tender. Make sure that local businesses are involved in it. So there is a chicken egg situation. When we tried to roll out local projects, there were hardly any local companies that we could have to rely on. And if we talk about really powering up the local economy in Lancashire, ideally that should not be only Lancashire as a consumer, but also delivering things, and that needs building a skills base. And that chicken egg problem is only solved if you have really projects going forward that are happening, not in 10 years, but ideally starting very, very soon. And the big opportunity that has to be seen is looking into going beyond just electricity, sorry for Electricity North West, but considering real fuels and considering hydrogen in that context, because you will not replace all boilers in the region suddenly overnight by heat pumps. That's not going to happen. But what is feasible is feeding greener fuels into the existing gas grid infrastructure. And I think there's no way for a green recovery without that. So that's my piece, and I'm happy to hand over and hear what EDF has to say.
Thank you very much, Harry. And there you are, Mark, perfect segue. Please tell us what EDF does have to say. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Mark Lees. I'm the director of the Heysham 2 power station. Challenges just now, well, the world has certainly changed, hasn't it, in the electricity supply industry, and gone are the days where we didn't bother what was behind the light switch when we turned it on, and everyone wants to know what's behind that now, especially young people, I would say. So I know I have 3 kids in their teenage years, and they want to know it's renewables behind that switch. And even given that their dad has worked in the nuclear industry for 30 years, doesn't really cut it with them. They want to know that there's something really green and new and fresh behind it. So I've got a job to do there. It's obviously a time of massive change, isn't it? And I have a background as an electrical engineer, so all of this stuff absolutely fascinates me. So I sometimes have a little fear about, let's call it, the technological competition between the different new emerging technologies here, and it almost extends to technology shaming, which I find a little bit of a shame. So as we develop these new technologies, we will need a mix. And I used to think this back when I started in the industry, that there's no one magic technology that's the solution to all our electrical problems. You do need a mix. I think we saw the reason for that in Texas recently. You get some extreme weather conditions, and that can knock out, for whatever reason, one particular generation source. And you can see the almost immediate social impact when you lose electricity. We've come to take it so much for granted, haven't we? We've all got a bit of a privileged role in the industry somehow, in keeping society moving by providing accessible to all, reasonably priced electricity. And if we can do it in a very, very low carbon way, more the better. And the fact is, the industry I work in, which has probably been the largest single source of any electrical power, but certainly low carbon power in Lancashire, by the end of the decade, as it currently stands, there'll be no nuclear provided generation within Lancashire. And given the history of nuclear technology, nuclear power in Lancashire, in many ways that's a bit of a shame as it stands right now. But what we do have is we have some fantastically experienced people in nuclear technologies, but also just fantastically experienced technical people that already feed loads of other industries. And in fact, I know quite a number of people who have grown up within Lancashire with a nuclear background that's actually powering the nuclear renaissance around the world. So I know many Lancastrians who are all over the world contributing to new nuclear power all over the place, which is actually fantastic. Obviously, wind generation has grown massively and there's potential for much, much, much more. There's loads of other technologies. Interesting to hear Harry talk about battery storage and hydrogen, which is going to be a bit of a game changer if we can crack that nut sometime soon. And the whole move, this demand side management, we were talking about that when I started 30 years ago, and I don't think we've properly got to grips with that. So again, the opportunities for growing that whole demand side area is still huge to me. So again, some of my colleagues on here might disagree with me, but right now, I don't see any solid plans to replace nuclear with nuclear in Lancashire, which is a bit of a shame, actually. Will it come in the future? Well, there's some opportunities. Never say never. I know the tide comes in and out with what new projects are coming and going, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit from Tom. He'll maybe have a different views as we go forward. But we will have a new economy based on decommissioning nuclear reactors in Lancashire, which I see going out at least to 2050. And again, good technologically based jobs in Lancashire, that the move will change from providing low carbon power to basically looking after the environment and bringing things back to as greenfield as we can possibly manage. I do have a slight worry over resilience and grid services as we move into the new green economy. We still need to balance out keeping a safe, reliable, steady electricity system, which big, large thermal generators like I have the privilege of looking after contribute right now, and that's some of the problems that we need to get into. And again, within Lancashire, there's lots of opportunities there to go after that. And I'll maybe just leave it at that, Miranda, for now as well.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, all of you, for your starting thoughts there. And I'm pleased to hear that it's all so much about the opportunities and about the positivity going forward, and about trying to create with the resource, whether it's in the public sector, or the motivation and the right support systems in place for the private sector to move forward with the agenda. No one's arguing against the agenda anymore. It's all about how do we do it. So looking at the chat, there's 2 or 3 comments that I want to bring together into a question, starting with those from Gina Dowding and also Jill Morris from Devo Connect. So they're both focusing on how we move forward on the retrofitting and the creating of new smart homes. So what does the panel think we should be doing there in terms of that activity? I mean, there's a whole load of suggestions there, from cutting the VAT on retrofitting to actually requiring baseline standards for the build of all new homes. I think let's probably start with Michael on that one and then go from there.
Thank you, Miranda. Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's something that the government in particular will need to address, obviously, if there's a possibility of tax changes to address that. That will be a national issue. but it's something that clearly needs to be looked at, because that will make a significant contribution towards this agenda as we move forward. And there will be particular challenges in some communities across Lancashire. As we know, Lancashire is a very diverse county, and we'll need to pick up on particular issues, not so much at a county level, but at a district level in particular, working with partners to deal with these. But we've got a budget this week, so there may be some announcements in that, who knows, but we shall see, and we need to just engage and try to shape policy moving forward. Thank you.
Other panellists, do you want to join in on that one? Otherwise I can push slightly harder. Damian, that was your hand first, and then
before you're forced to kind of pick on people, I thought I'd maybe make a contribution. I think this question kind of sums up kind of both the opportunities and the challenge. I think I'm right in saying that kind of across the north as a whole, homes account for about 30% of carbon emissions. So it's a third of carbon emissions from homes. So there's clearly an opportunity there, both in terms of addressing the amount of carbon that we're emitting, but also in providing products and services that kind of deal with that issue. But it's not a simple kind of one answer question, because it needs a combination of, I think, government regulation and kind of response across the country. There's a skills issue that needs to be addressed. So if we take, for example, I've been working with a housing association. They've been retrofitting some of their heating systems, but have really struggled to find people who can fit heat pump systems. So if you want a gas engineer, you can find them fairly straightforwardly. If you want a heat pump engineer, it's really difficult. So there's a skills issue that we need to address, and then there's also a societal issue that we need to address, because in our poorer communities, the standard of accommodation is already a challenge. But it's likely that retrofitting would be focused on kind of the more affordable end of the market. The poorer housing stock is the more expensive end of the market to deal with. So we need a whole combination of action to address these issues, from policy to skills to kind of societal change. So, but I do think it's an illustration of where there's an opportunity for businesses to go out and provide those products and services that help people kind of meet these challenges.
You're absolutely right there. In that it is the support that's needed that's there. It's the support for retrofitting. I think it's the being brave on how we go forward in terms of public sector policy as well. Paul, what have you got to have there?
I was going to echo a lot of Damian's comments there. In the research that we've done to aid our forecasting, it's clear that Lancashire has a much higher incidence of fuel poverty than large parts of the rest of the country. We have quite a considerable housing stock that is of low energy efficiency grade, which, as Damian said, makes it harder to retrofit, more expensive to retrofit. And I think these combinations, and sorry, the other thing I was going to add is that we actually have a very high incidence of those on the gas network. So a very large proportion of all of our homes in Lancashire are connected to the gas network and heated by gas. So the transition is going to be a really big challenge for Lancashire in terms of domestic heating, and it's going to require skills, as Damian's already highlighted. It's going to require proactivity to stimulate the green jobs that come along with that as an opportunity in the region. If we're not careful in Lancashire, what will happen is that Lancashire will be a laggard in this transition to retrofitting. And therefore what we will be doing is importing the new skilled jobs from other regions of the country that have gone first. So if Lancashire wants to seize the economic opportunity presented by the investment that's essential in retrofitting our housing stock and improving the lives of those who do struggle to pay their heating bills now, then real proactive action is required, so that we go further and we go faster, and therefore we're not a laggard to the rest of the country in importing their skills. We become an exporter of skilled resource out to the rest of the country.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly the key, in that we have to be forceful with this direct action. I hate to be the chair that comments, but you know this is my personal subject, so I am going to. I think we do need direct action by the public sector. I think we need baseline planning permission standards imposed now, so that any new build has got to be of a really ambitious standard. Let's lead in Lancashire, not lag behind. I think we need to bend the public sector funding to come, whether that's the UK Shared Prosperity funding or whatever else, to make sure we're subsidising retrofit and pushing on government to make that move. And I think we have the opportunity with the skills agenda, if we invest, to really lead the deployment. But as you say, you can't find an energy ground source heat pump engineer for love nor money. We need them training. Moving on to industry, because I'm conscious of two of our panelists very much from the industrial side. Do you think that the, picking up the question again from another one from Gina, do you think that the opportunities in the energy sector, including nuclear, to come will give a good diversification route for some of our business sectors that are under pressure post-COVID? To Mark and to Harry especially.
Yeah, so Miranda, that's an interesting question. With the maturity of the nuclear area, the suppliers that we use are well established, and there's a history of relationship that runs back many of years. So it can be quite difficult to open up new innovative ways of supplying the industry in any meaningful way. Now, that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't try to do that. I posted a comment when we were talking about education there. I used to be filled with shame driving past Lancaster and Morecambe College every day, a college similar to where I started, and I think, wait a minute, I run a pretty major industrial plant not 4 miles from here, and we have little to no interaction with that college. So we've reached into the college to try and build a bit of a relationship there, because it's right on our doorstep. And to be honest, it wasn't that hard to find an opportunity where they could help us and we could help them. So we've developed up a bit of a course to help some of our staff further develop themselves, and it really supports the local college, which is great. So we're always on the lookout for new opportunities to do so, and I'm open to hear from anyone who think there's an opportunity there. But with a mature industry like ours, it's hard to be transformational with that. Now that will change when we move into decommissioning, Miranda. So there'll be new opportunities for local businesses then, and we'll need to work with each other to see how we unlock that. Yeah.
As Tom Samson from Rolls-Royce was just saying, we have a very unique heritage with nuclear energy in Heysham and Springfields, and we should be prioritising transition which embraces our existing talent and capabilities around nuclear to deliver low-cost competitive nuclear for the future. Do the panellists agree that creating UK solutions, which we can also export, is preferable to importing technology for clean energy?
Absolutely.
Go on, Harry.
Yeah, well, it's sort of building on what I also said in my initial statement. I mean, if we're constantly asking, okay, it better be green, but it has to be cheap, otherwise we don't do it, then we don't get anywhere. So there must be a scheme. There must be also projects in the pipeline that people know about. I mean, Eden Project North is one of the ones that hopefully come along, and then there's certainly a bigger chunk of opportunities there that companies can then aim at and then can prepare their skill set. There's no way that any company is able to upskill with a notice of 6 months in certain ways of getting high voltage certified engineers on board and things that you would need for higher level energy storage systems, for instance. But if there's a pipeline of projects of 5 years that are coming along, where there might even be a possibility to give preference to local companies, that is then something people can plan with and can upskill. So I think that would be the big opportunity. And yeah, so really local talent should really beat lower prices from overseas there.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to move now to the first of our polling questions, and then we'll come back briefly for one more question from this panel. Paul, would you like to take us through our first polling question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Miranda. So our first question today is, what should Electricity North West's focus be in helping with the green recovery? So we've already heard from the panel, you know, a number of different challenges here. And as I said in my introduction, should we really be focusing more on net zero? And we need to drive that forward. Should it be more on keeping bills as low as possible and protecting consumers in vulnerable situations? Or should we be balancing out both investment in net zero and the protection of customers in vulnerable situations? So what have we got to do here? Have we got to prioritise one over the other, bills over decarbonisation, or do we have to find a way to move forward on all fronts? So if you could choose an option and click submit, that would be great. And hopefully I will see how we're going.
See the results shortly.
So I've got 32 responses have come in so far. I'm reliably informed. If we could maybe, we're getting more coming in, that's great. People casting a vote. Maybe it's worth us having a look at the initial set of responses, see what spread we get. Okay, so a big drive towards the balanced approach, but some thought about net zero being the priority. So there's quite an interesting set of results here.
Yeah, 103% in total.
Yeah, exactly. well spotted, Harry. Thank you. Yeah. So there's some rounding error in there.
Stop the counting now.
But interesting that you know, a very strong leaning towards the balance, and that we need to do everything. Some saying if you have to focus on one, then focus on net zero more than that, than keeping bills low. Not a single vote for just keeping bills low and seeking to just protect customers in vulnerable circumstances as the only priority. So that's very informative, very interesting.
It is. I think first of all, we're all going to be dealing with that balance, aren't we? But it's nice to be able to hear that call from your constituents, so to speak, that they do expect you and want you to be marrying those two differing aims and trying to bring them together in the policy going forward. Just one final question to this panel. I'm going to go back to the reference we've seen from Adam Smith to the grid's capability for moving to electric vehicles. As electric vehicles become more increasingly popular, how will the effect of more people installing their own EV charging point at homes affect the network? Will there be an increase in the need, in the capacity need? Does that create new substations? And I think probably, Paul, we need you to start with that.
Yeah, it absolutely is going to drive a need for increased capacity in the long run. But I'm pleased to say that in the immediate future, Lancashire is very well served with an electrical network that has quite a lot of available capacity. And what we are seeking to also do is to build a new market for flexibility services. And Electricity North West are going to do everything we can to stimulate this market. We're investing in the technology that will support that. We're investing in the technology that will enable its rapid deployment. We have already done an assessment of our capacity requirements out to 2028 and issued to the growing flexibility market the entirety of all of our capacity requirements to 2028 to say, how much of this could you potentially bid for, provide, etc. So we're trying to really stimulate that marketplace. So flexibility will be faster, and flexibility will mean we won't have to build lots of new substations. I think ultimately, in the long term, we will need to maximise the use of our existing assets and supplement those. I don't think it means a large amount of new large substation building, but it will mean that we'll need to retrofit the existing assets to get more capacity out of them. But we're already doing innovative research into how you can get an extra 20% out of all of our local substations that you might find at the end of your street, and how we can control the network in smarter ways so that we spread the load across time and we minimise what we have to spend on it and maximise the flexibility opportunities.
Thank you very much. Time, as ever with these things, moves incredibly quickly, and it is already 17 minutes past 11. So we need to move on in terms of our second panel. But thank you very much to our panellists so far. Please stay with us, and as our second group of panellists have been doing, make sure your voices and thoughts are heard in the chat, and we'll bring those back in, because our next questions are very much around business. So hopefully you can continue to feed in. There are also some questions being posed within the chat around what do you think, all of the attendees, what do you think are the specific challenges and opportunities that the county faces, and what can Electricity North West do to help serve those? So please put your answers in there, because the chat is used afterwards very much to help lead thoughts going forward. But thank you to Mark, to Harry, to Michael and to Damian. And we'll move on to the second panel, please. So the second leader panel, we have Lynn Collins, Regional Secretary from the TUC, Karl Williams, Professor at UCLAN and Head of the Making Carbon Work Project, Tom Samson, Interim Chief Executive at UK SMR Consortium, Rolls-Royce, Daryl Platt, Vice Principal Engagement at Blackpool and the Fylde College, and Lisa Mosier, Strategic Coordinator at Lancashire Skills and Employment Hub for LCC. So our key question to you, and then we'll go in that order, just with a brief 2 or 3 minutes from you with who you are and also your thoughts on this question. As the net zero transition accelerates, what are the opportunities to reboot the economy and create green jobs and skills in Lancashire? So we've already touched on skills. It's going to be a key opportunity, but also a threat to that opportunity if we don't really capitalise on them. So Lynn, first to you, please.
Thanks, Miranda, and thanks for inviting us along. I've separated out the reboot in the economy and the jobs and skills bit, so just some kind of headings under each of those. Firstly, in terms of rebooting the economy, I think there's a really strong need for partnership working. TUC called on the government to establish a national recovery panel as we come out of COVID, and I think there's a real need for local partnership recovery panels to be developed. So where we've worked with combined authority areas, we've developed some good models about this, both in terms of COVID recovery, but also in terms of climate partnerships. So there are some good examples, and we'd want to bring those examples away from those combined authority areas into the other sub-regions in the Northwest, so that we're working together to develop that. I've touched on kind of what I've called old industries and what I've called new industries. For old industries, I think there's a real need for workplace transition agreements to be drawn up by unions and employers working together, and that should help create a strong role for green and climate change reps in workplaces. We do have them at the moment. Unfortunately, they don't have the same statutory rights that other union reps have, but I think there is a need for the development of the role of green union reps in workplaces with the associated time off and training to carry out that role, again creating those partnerships very much at local level. And for new industries, we need to look at investment and grant opportunities and making sure that we write into those opportunities. First of all, I would say, wouldn't I, from the TUC, good jobs, the creation of good jobs with decent terms and conditions, but also strong social value clauses. So that would pick up some of the issues that I think were raised in the earlier discussion around promoting local supply chains, spending locally in the economy, developing links with local communities, using any grants that we issue to build new industries, to provide some leverage. Final thing, just on rebooting the economy, the Northwest Leaders Board has recently been kind of revamped and re-established. And I think there's a key role there for the Northwest Leaders Board to take on this issue. And this may be one of the issues that colleagues who are connected into that board want to put as a priority area for discussion across the whole of the Northwest. Coming very quickly then onto green jobs and skills, I think both apprenticeships and any flexibilities that are announced this week around apprenticeships and the Kickstart scheme create an opportunity to bring people into new areas of work and create those new jobs and skills with government support. The flexibilities on apprenticeships might, for instance, allow apprenticeships to be created within supply chains, so that apprentice training is shared by a number of employers across the supply chains. I don't think we do enough in connecting to schools. Colleagues talked earlier about connecting to colleges. I think we've got more we can do to connect into schools, to start to promote the type of jobs that we're going to need in our economy in the future. And at the moment, we're really only recruiting from less than half of the population into energy industries. So more promotion of jobs for women and BAME communities, and a real a strong emphasis on diversity. I think we need fair funding for the further education sector. If we're going to deliver retrofit, it's going to be delivered by further education providers, training up the people to do that work. But their sectors took a massive hit in terms of funding and is seen as very much the poor relation to the HE sector. So fair funding for them. And finally, just to say, the government announced in October they were withdrawing the funding for the Union Learning Fund. Union Learning Fund's been at the forefront of training union learning reps in workplaces to help employers reskill and retrain people for the new types of jobs. Absolute travesty that that funding is going on the 31st of March. We're still having yet another go this week of putting pressure on the Chancellor to announce its retention or replacement with something. Because the work that those union learning reps have done to train over 250,000 people in learning every year across the country is really invaluable, and we wouldn't want to see that lost. So a few points from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. I know what you mean. There's a huge opportunity if our businesses are able to train up their staff, their existing staff, and see new staff coming through to take these jobs and to see this shift in industry. There's some really good conversation going on in the chat, a lot of connections being made between people, and hopefully some collaborations to come. So do make sure you're part of that. So the same question to Professor Karl Williams from UCLAN. What are the opportunities to reboot the economy and create green jobs and skills in Lancashire?
Thanks very much, Miranda, and thanks very much for inviting me along to the panel. We're in tough economic times at the moment. We've got the Chancellor looking at potentially increasing taxes amongst businesses. So the question is, how do we shift businesses to start thinking about green recovery when many are very cautious about taking up the technology because of the lack of knowledge around skills? So not only skills within their businesses, but also, as with the earlier panel, about skills within the industry for new technologies to come along. So how do you get the fitters to bring in your heat pumps and everything else? But I think we're in a great position in the Northwest to focus on low carbon and green jobs. And I think it's really important as we come out of COVID that there's much more emphasis on businesses embracing net zero and looking at how upskilling their workforce can actually help them to move forward with that. That will help the Lancashire business become more competitive and fit for purpose, and will also allow them to focus on the carbon agenda. And green jobs require training and upskilling. And I think within the Northwest, we have some really good universities, we have some really good colleges that can support that. And as Lynn was saying, through apprenticeship schemes, the government is always talking about extending the apprenticeship schemes at the moment so that you can carry from one company to another, which would be really, really useful. But it's not just about providing apprenticeships, it's also about upskilling within companies as well, because lots of companies find they don't have the skills within that to embrace a new type of technology, to embrace a new way of manufacturing, to embrace new products. So again, the HEI and the college sector can help companies to upskill their existing workforce as well. And the other thing that we have here uniquely within Lancashire is that we have a number of European regional development funding projects which are focused purely on carbon and supporting companies to make that change. So I lead the Making Carbon Work project, also I'm part of the Eco Innovation Northwest. Miranda, you have your ERDF project as well. And I think the challenge we have is trying to engage companies to realize how important this is now to get involved in looking at their business, looking at what skills they need in their workforce, looking at what grants and opportunities are available, because we don't know how long these opportunities are going to exist. We don't know what the government is going to replace it by in 2023. And really what we want to try and motivate companies and businesses here is to start to engage now so they can see what skills they need for their workforce. They can see what opportunities there are for them to change their processes, to change their way of working, and also to engage in renewable energy and other things. And I think it's really important, especially as Lynn has mentioned about supply chains as well. So to seeing where they fit within the supply chain, because I think there's going to be much more emphasis around net zero within the overall supply chain, whether you're a business as part of a supply chain or whether you're a larger business that has a supply chain, you're going to start looking at companies and how they fit into that. And I think that's the whole package around green jobs and low carbon technology.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're going to see this whole balance throughout the whole of this morning. It's about an opportunity and a threat. There's a threat if you don't take advantage of it, but there's a really big opportunity to be at the front of the sort of first mover piece with businesses, both in terms of moving your supply chain forward, but also hopefully in terms of getting into public sector supply chains. If they become more stringent, then that will be another way of encouraging our business audience further forward with carrots rather than sticks as well. So to move on to Tom Samson from the Interim Chief Executive at UK SMR Consortium. Please, Tom, thank you.
Thanks, Miranda, and thanks, Electricity Northwest, for inviting me to come along today and speak. I've actually been in this job for 11 months, all from my house in Lancaster, so it's great to be talking to a local audience for once, so thanks for that opportunity. With our SMR programme in Rolls-Royce and with our consortium, we're now moving forward. We've now recently secured the government grant funding for the next phase of this programme with 250 million. And we're currently raising about 300 million to take the design through its regulatory approval process with the UK regulator. That grant funding has been hugely important for us to innovate, because we are innovating here to create a new way of delivering nuclear that's specifically focused on a factory-built, a fully integrated nuclear power plant that's delivered to site. And that allows us to then achieve a low-cost nuclear solution that is deliverable with confidence, given it's factory built and is investable, so we can build it out. And it's important for me to highlight the fact that this is a UK design that will be UK manufactured. And from a clean energy perspective, that's a 80% plus UK content solution in this clean energy transition, which I think is something that many other clean energy solutions will struggle to achieve in terms of what we've got as a potential in the UK to manufacture and to produce something as clean and as manageable as this as a technology, and cost competitive. We're looking at being below £50 a megawatt hour and even down as low as £35 a megawatt hour if we access the regulated asset-based funding model. Funding is crucial to the actual end consumer cost for this technology, and that range of £35 to £50 a megawatt hour is highly compelling and competitive. And within that number, there are jobs, factories and sites that can host this technology across the Northwest. And in particular, as I've mentioned already, with nuclear sites and nuclear fuel fabrication, Lancashire has a huge opportunity to benefit from this programme. Those factories will be producing modules, they'll be producing heavy engineered products, and those factories will be located across the north, which is where most of the sites are. So the opportunity here to create high value engineering and technical jobs that are not only focused on delivering UK clean energy solutions, but importantly, creating export potential around the world and many other markets where they're also trying to find cost competitive clean energy solutions is vitally important. And I'm a huge advocate that the journey to clean energy and to net zero, we have an obligation in this country to make sure we embark on that journey in a way that maximises the economic benefit in the UK. I've been involved with nuclear in the UAE for a number of years before coming back to the UK. I led the NuGen programme up in West Cumbria, and all of that was reliant on foreign technologies. We've now got an opportunity with a domestic technology to really revitalise our industrial base and create really high value and sustainable jobs, particularly across the north with this new technology. So that's why I'm excited to talk to this audience today and make sure we're aware, to Mark's point, nuclear has got a challenging path forward, but with this technology and with the right level of local and government support, we can really make a big difference and create huge opportunity in the UK and beyond.
UK and beyond being the key point. Thank you very much, Tom. It's good to hear from you. So to Daryl Platt, Vice Principal Engagement at Blackpool and Fylde College, please.
Thanks, Miranda. The areas where, as an institution, we're seeing early signs of demand in the energy infrastructure for supply to upgrade to meet future demands. We're getting lots of inquiries around digitisation of energy, monitoring use of consumer analysis and fault detection via AI. Outside of that, the construction sector, which someone touched on earlier on, we're in greener homes and retrofitting of existing housing stock. And then particularly of interest at the moment to a lot of people is hydrogen, both generation and storage, but particularly in point-to-point transport usage in public sector vehicles. And that produces quite a lot of challenges in adoption from a skills perspective. Outside of regulatory intervention, skills gaps are generally driven by rapid technological advancements and innovations from research and development linked to market demand. The opportunity to be able to identify these early and then co-create the skills programs with employers and research institutions in order to deliver the workforce that requires time. We've got a long-standing relationship with Lancaster University and employee groups in order to shorten the timeline between innovation and skills delivery. There's also a recent initiative working collaborative with all of the universities and colleges in the county to work this way to deliver skill solutions for the area. The speed to skill delivery and the volume of learners is particularly important when many of the skills required for a net zero transition are also required across the entire economy. For example, there's a shortage of supply of digital skills, specifically in analytics, AI, and cybersecurity. When you consider the timeline for skills delivery will be a year to develop and gain approval from an awarding body for a qualification, followed by a learning period upon entry of between 1 year for a level 3 entrant and level 3 years for a level 2 if you want to get a level 4 qual, which is what a lot of these technologies require. The opportunity to provide the skilled workforce required to succeed come from 3 core areas, therefore. You've got the reskilling of existing engineers, and this is the fastest route. It's not without challenges, but if you think about the end of a furlough scheme, that might be the quickest solution that we've got as some of these people are displaced. Inspiring FE and HE students into net zero careers. This depends upon a pipeline of school leavers that studied STEM subjects to be there, and also engagement from employers and providers within those institutions. As you led before, we are always looking for guest speakers to come into here, but I know it's also a big challenge at high schools, providing high quality careers advice and guidance and inspiration to choose STEM subjects as part of their option, because that's the pipeline of learners coming forward. The 2020 Engineering UK report across the UK showed the number of GCSEs and maths and scientists and computers have been rising. At the same time, entries for design and technology and engineering have been failing. Entries for maths and double sciences rose by 4% and 5% respectively. But in 2019, entries for engineering, design and technology fell by 31% and 22% respectively. This continues to be a notable lack of females taking elective STEM subjects such as design and technology, computing and engineering. Only 1 in 10 entries were by females, and this despite females continuing to outperform males in most GCSE STEM subjects. So in summary, I believe for the opportunities to get the skilled workforce, following the end of furlough, work with displaced engineers and get them into net zero transition. Investments in education, not just for recruitment, but also in stimulating high school learners to take STEM subjects. And a call for industry employer partners to engage early with skill providers to co-create the programs and skill the generation of the future. That's it, Amanda.
Thank you, Daryl. I think this is the most straightforward segue of all between our speakers, because now we hand on to Lisa, who will thoroughly echo what you're talking about and hopefully give us some idea of how we're going to do exactly that. Thank you.
Thanks, Miranda. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Daryl. We didn't compare notes before this, but I'm feeling as though we were in a room together somehow. We come to very similar conclusions when answering this question. I work for the Lancashire Skills and Employment Hub, and we're a strategic team working on the skills and employment priorities with a wide range of partners, including many in the virtual room today. And we work to the Local Enterprise Partnership, the LEP, and also the leaders of the local authorities. Now, for me, from the 10-point plan to the public sector low carbon skills fund and the forthcoming energy white paper, that shift to net zero technologies is completely underpinned and reliant on jobs. And that's what everyone said to this point. And there is a reliance on skills needed for those jobs. And it's interesting that there's jobs, but not quite as much as the skills that needs to underpin it all. And that they all point to that huge acceleration and rollout, albeit that the policy is not clear in some cases, which makes it very difficult to anticipate or plan. There's just huge potential in the sector. It's exceptional. So for me, and this is where me and Daryl are completely aligned, the opportunities for me that lie in this is focusing on 3 key areas. The first is about reskilling and retraining people. That shift in demand for jobs from certain old sectors, if you want to call that, old industries, we need to support all that with funding and reskilling support. We all know that Lancashire has a huge legacy in manufacturing. Skilled workers are being displaced. For example, aerospace, due to COVID, that might turn around, but it's about timing this so we can provide those people with reskilling opportunities. We can help them to pivot and move those skills into green technology and green solutions. There's an advanced engineering and manufacturing watchtower that's being led by Lancashire County Council. And that actually contains some elements of support to redeploy skilled workers and use their transferable skills into industries with demand, which includes obviously the energy one. And again, skilled workers in oil and gas industry also have transferable skills, but that's kind of that longer term transfer of skills. Alongside those pivoting of skills, we've also got a lot of unemployed people, unfortunately, and what can we do to help them retrain and enter this growing sector? Now, the government have said that they'll help people train for new green jobs through their lifetime skills guarantee programme, but it's about jumping on that opportunity and making it work for Lancashire. The second, again, I'm in line with Daryl all the way, is about inspiring the future workforce and creating a skills pipeline. A strength we've got in Lancashire is a very well joined up network of education and skills organisations, right from schools through to colleges, private training providers through to the universities, alongside DWP, etc. And we all collaborate with each other, work with each other really well. And any entry point from an employer point of view, we will be able to bring into that world and support. So, for example, and this picks up on Lynn's points, Daryl's and a couple of others, that we have a careers hub. It's a network of 130 schools and colleges working with employers across Lancashire. And it's about engaging people, young people, articulate those career opportunities and the demand in this sector to inspire them to then go into it, including the huge gender inequalities. And that was a great thing that Lynn said about we're only recruiting from 50%, it's not going to help us with our ambitions. The white paper, the FE white paper, has never been so important in bringing in that key role of employers and also lifting up the FE sector, which has a key part to play, and it has been ignored too much in the past. I agree with Lynn on that, but I think things are changing now. But the key for us, that final area of focus, is about being a clear and proactive voice that can articulate skills needs and underpin the success of those first two aims. We need to understand what the sector needs to be able to respond to it, and to be able to respond to it locally, but also that opportunity to influence government doesn't seem to be more timely. In the 10-point plan, it says that the government have launched a Green Jobs Task Force. So we've got that particular opportunity to advise, shape policy and plans to ensure that the government are putting the money in the right places to support people to enter or pivot into the industry. As I said, we're as a hub at that strategic level looking at those priorities, and we're actually on the cusp of launching some research into the sector, and Miranda's helping us shape that, and we're working with the Work Foundation, part of Lancaster University. So that research is going to be shortly kicked off, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to encourage anyone interested listening now to contact me to get involved in that, because that's going to be us proactively pulling together our needs and being able to use that as a voice back, as I said, to the educational and skills sector and also central government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone so far for your comments and your contributions. I want to try and make sure we're bringing together the skills argument with the green recovery argument economically. John Whitten has posted a comment and a call for action, saying that Lancashire has some of the poorest communities in Europe. There's a huge opportunity to focus our efforts on implementing training schemes that directly benefit these communities as a route out of poverty and disadvantage. The issue of climate change is systemic, so implementing low carbon greenhouse gas schemes is an opportunity to apply clear social justice criteria to both the public and private sector procurement process. So the question is, what do we do from that to make sure those skills opportunities are being provided and taken up by those communities? And how do we get businesses positioning themselves to make sure those jobs are being provided? So how do we get our economy taking advantage of this so that it can have the effect that John is suggesting we should? How do we stimulate both the companies and the skills uptake? Any suggestions of where to start, Lisa? And then I think that was Tom at the bottom there, sorry.
I think it's the balance of carrot and stick. And I think that two key pieces of work or focus should be social value, which is obviously what Lynn's already mentioned, and embedding that. We've got a social value pledge and an approach that supports businesses not only to have to write bids to say what they're going to meet in terms of social value, but also support the businesses to then undertake that and link them in, as I said, with that strong network. The other being the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and being able to influence that with it replacing obviously the European funds, to say this is what we need. We need to again support those people in those situations, in those areas who are unemployed, and we need to bring them back into the economy to contribute. But we've always got to say, well, where are the jobs? Because that's what underpins it all. So I think those two things, supporting businesses with funding to help them do, say, pre-employment training specifically for the energy sector.
To create the jobs and then encourage the skills to be developed to fit the jobs. Tom, I think you put your hand up too.
Yeah, I was going to make a point about the job creation comes from the demand, and the demand comes from manufacturing, technology, infrastructure deployments. And so we've got to try to move towards those types of decisions and turn all the ambition and the green point, the 10-point plan and the energy white paper into actual tangible programs, which will then drive those jobs. And without that kind of shift towards deployment, then the jobs are not going to be realised. So we're trying to promote within this SMR programme that kind of earlier, easier decision making, a different roadmap for nuclear, because that's historically been problematic and timely and lengthy and complicated, to try to get to the end point, which is a fleet of these units across the UK. How do we have to get on the road to that fleet? What has to happen now for that to happen? So focus the dialogue and the attention on the decisions around policy and commitments so that the jobs can then be created. And then the second thing I was going to say is we fully advocate and some of you may have been involved with what we were doing in New Gen in West Cumbria. We've tried to build into this new roadmap for nuclear a delivery alliance, which involves not just industry and government, but brings to the table that community voice and that local perspective as part of the process, not an afterthought that comes out at the end of the planning cycle, so that that voice can really contribute what they can offer, what they can deliver, and how they can be part of the transition as these technologies and projects come to life.
And Daryl and then Karl too would like to come in. Daryl, you first.
So we've had a track record of doing something similar in both the traditional energy and the health sector for a number of years. And an easy example would be, if you talk about the health sector, academic attainment needs to be at where it could be. So if you want to be a nurse, you need to have level 3 qualifications to be able to progress to level 4, 5 and 6 and progress through. What we've done is we created a skills elevator through various related industries to be able to get through that. So you can take people through care homes and then into health, and we've created a health and social care academy. We've had something similar for the offshore industry in the past. So the creation of a similar kind of scheme where businesses work together to take people at various levels, from entry-level construction through to the energy sector, we can pull those industries together and do that. And that's an easy way. We just need employer partners to engage and talk about the specific skills challenges that they've got, and then we can help raise those.
Thank you very much, Daryl. And Karl?
I think we're at the start really of the journey of engaging employers and businesses to start thinking about net zero and what they require. I mean, the important thing is about supporting businesses now so that they can start to develop the technologies, the support that they want, and also the upskilling they require, and the green jobs, so that there are these green jobs. There is the opportunity to empower local communities to engage with the businesses. The challenge we have is that the target for net zero of 2050 is a long way off. So it's always quite difficult to get businesses to think about things that are a long way off now. And one of the ways that the government can do that, and the government is doing that at the moment through the various funding, is to support businesses to think about what they need and to help them move forward so that they can look at the upskilling that's required within their organizations. They can look at what type of green jobs. They can then inform the providers and the FE colleges and universities and the schools of what's required in the future. But it's that impetus really to kickstart a lot of businesses to start thinking about it. We deal with lots of businesses, and we have businesses that are really proactive and thinking ahead, and this is where we want to go and this is what we want. But equally, we meet businesses in Lancashire who are going, we're not in that position. We don't want to go that way for economic reasons or where the company is at the moment. And it's about supporting those sort of companies, because really we need the whole of Lancashire to move forward, just not little bits of it in different sectors.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to come to Lynn, and then we will go to our next poll question before I take one final point from the audience. So Lynn, please.
Just a very quick point on something that really practically businesses can do, and that's in terms of supporting apprentices or Kickstart trainees with mentoring in the workplace. And this is really important, particularly if we want to diversify our intakes. You don't want to land someone in a workplace that's pale, male and stale with absolutely no support if you're trying to recruit a more diverse workforce. So we've worked with employers to develop apprenticeship mentoring programs so that they team up with experienced workers in the workplace who'll support them through that. It was actually developed at Springfields, I think, in Lancashire. And we're doing something similar around the Kickstart program, because those placements will need supporters to go into work. So just to flag up to employers to start to think about how you support people coming in, because the worst thing that can happen is you get them through the door, you start training them, and they decide that's not for them and that industry isn't for them. You've wasted an investment, they've wasted an investment in that. And the other side of the coin is to build confidence for people already in the industry that they can retrain. So again, we developed with our UCLAN a series of midlife career review tools to give people the confidence that they have got transferable skills. So just thinking about in those kind of energy intensive industries or industries that are being faced with redundancy, how do we build people's confidence that they have got skills and those skills can be repurposed for more green jobs in the future?
Thank you, Lynn. That's a very salient point. That's like the whole Industry 4 question for Lancashire, is that the middle of our workforce are in a point where their skills aren't evolving necessarily as fast as the technology is evolving. And that's now the same thing with the net zero and the green skills element, is we need to give our current workforces the confidence that they will be retrained as those businesses diversify and pivot into new sectors. So let me just come to Paul for our polling question.
Okay, thank you, Miranda. And I think it's actually very pertinent to the discussion we've just had about skills and how we stimulate that pull for new skills required. So we're interested in how big a role we should have in that. Should we be stimulating this growth in new low carbon technologies? Should we be educating and advising our customers about net zero? Is that businesses? Is that domestic customers? Should we be taking on new initiatives to broaden our role and create new roles that support customers in vulnerable circumstances, initiatives to tackle fuel poverty? So again, this is where we're interested in your feedback, and you can choose more than one in this poll. So this is not a choose the best option one like we had last time. What we're interested in is how many of these things should we be doing? So pick what you think is most appropriate and then click submit, please. Okay, so about half the people on the conference have submitted so far, so we'll give it a little bit longer for others. And while we're doing that, I'll just say that I found that whole discussion about skills fantastic. We are looking hard at what extra skills and how the workforce will need to grow in Electricity Northwest to deliver the work that we have to do. We have a fantastic training academy based in Lancashire in Blackburn, where we can create these new jobs. We've got a regular apprentice intake, and we're really looking hard at how we attract all the great talent from across the region into that. So we have the, a very wide and diverse mix of people coming into our business to reflect the wide, diverse mix of customers that we serve. So we're getting there now. 30 odd people have completed the poll. So let's have a look at what results we've had so far. Okay, and here we can see a wide range of things supported, but educating and advising business customers about net zero being the strongest one there. And I think that ties directly back into that discussion we were just having about creating that supply pool that then requires businesses to gives business the opportunity, if you like, to say, right, what do we need to do about our workforce? How do we then bring in people who are going to help us on that transition to net zero? So that's great, really, really interesting to see. Thanks very much to everybody about their feedback. Back to you, Miranda.
Thank you, Paul. I just want to go back to a comment that was in the chat a moment ago, and then to ask a question finally to Michael Green, if he's still with us. A comment from Adam Smith. I had asked, how do we go on about unlocking the green recovery potential from businesses moving into this space? And Adam had said, slowly, carefully. Moving too hard may actually put some businesses off. They're focused on getting back to business as usual rather than immediate change. However, embedding the change into the business, showing the benefits, both green and financial, will help drive them and hopefully drive the recovery. Local government will be the key to help us creating those jobs and get a larger cycle of job creation and economic development. economic demand growing from that. And I think that's right. This is that opportunity and threat in exactly that way. I just wanted to put one challenge back to Michael very, very briefly. If we're trying to embrace all of these conversations about skills and opportunity, and also the challenging target that Lancashire has now set itself and all of us to go for net zero by 2030, can we see some definite moves within all public sector procurement contracts and also in our planning system to give us solid Lancashire baselines to help drive forward our low carbon economic opportunities?
Thanks, Miranda. And can I first of all say that this morning's session has been really interesting and thought-provoking in many ways. So thank you to everybody who's made a contribution. I think you're absolutely right. From a planning perspective, so that is primarily a function of the district authorities. So it's the lower tier authorities rather than the county council. But working together with them, I think that's something that we need to see because those planning policies need to lift that bar. In terms of procurement, again, all the local authorities need to take this into account, but we need to make sure that the opportunities are there for Lancashire businesses to embrace the growth of the future. And certainly ourselves as a county council are very keen on this. And we're putting a number of initiatives in place to take this forward. The Advanced Engineering and Manufacturing Watchtower that was mentioned earlier, that we've just put £1 million into funding. It is very much focused at looking at some of these areas. So we are keen to do it as a county, and procurement will play a part moving forward, and working with the other local authorities as well. I think there is certainly mileage in doing that further so that we can actually tackle the green issues, but also address the growth and make sure that we get the growth moving forwards as well, because ultimately that provides the income and the jobs for Lancashire residents.
No, thank you very much. I think that's right. I think we need the public sector, then we need the skills provision, then we need the business commitments that we're hearing, and obviously Electricity North West in terms of the grid that enables us really to take advantage of all those opportunities and lead in terms of Lancashire rather than lagging. So thank you to all of those panellists in that second session. And thank you from me to the attendees. But now to close off, I hand back to Electricity North West, and thank you to all of you and your team, Paul, as well.
Oh, no, thank you to you, first of all, Miranda, for holding us all to a very tight agenda, getting through a really interesting discussion and bringing lots of voices in to be heard. So great chairing and great to get your own insights as well. I'd just like to thank all of our speakers today. A really interesting discussion and great participation from those observing and watching, lots of comments in the chat and lots of stimulation to the debate. We've had quite a wide-ranging discussion from housing retrofit to opportunities for growth and revitalisation of the economy across Lancashire, to the skills that are required, and hearing some positive things about initiatives that can be put in place to do that, as well as some great insight from Michael on what the county council can do to put some of that stimulation in place as well. If we can continue this progress and discussion with the sort of positivity that we've seen on the discussion today about seizing all of the opportunities and making them benefit the people across Lancashire, then I think there's some great things that can happen here, and we can achieve these two targets of stimulating the economy, recovering from COVID, and moving forward towards a net zero future. So it's been great for us to hear all of this discussion. Thank you very much to everybody who's participated today, and I'll look forward to hopefully getting more contribution and debate from everybody across Lancashire in our final closing summit that we're going to build to through the year and hold in September. So we'll have a Northwest wide powering up the recovery summit this September, where we'll bring in contributions from all the different regions of the Northwest and try and make some key conclusions and calls for action on what we should do going forward. So thank you very much, everybody, and I wish you a good afternoon and a good week.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.